Welcome, Bob and fam. It's your host, Alan, back with another video. Today's video is The Time Traveler Who Vanished. Let's get into today's video. Like, share, and subscribe after the video.
On April 23, 2006, a man in his early 20s was seen in Kyiv, Ukraine, staring at a high-rise apartment building. Witnesses described him as looking confused and anxious. They thought he might have been a lost tourist. The man approached two police officers and nervously asked for directions to a place that didn't exist. The officers asked the young man for identification, but there were two problems with his ID. One, his documents were issued by the Soviet Union, which no longer existed. The second problem, according to his birth date, this young man was born in 1932. In 2011, a Russian documentary called The Time Traveler told the story of Sergei Ponomarenko, a man who seemed to be slipping in and out of time. Eyewitnesses first saw Ponomarenko standing at an intersection in Kyiv looking confused and a little frightened. He was described as being in his early 20s and wearing clothes that looked new but were 50 years out of fashion. Ponomarenko was asking everyone he met how to get to Peshnaya Street, but nobody heard of it. His strange behavior caught the attention of police officer Sergei Anapenko and his partner, who approached him. Again, Ponomarenko wanted directions to Peshnaya Street. When he tried to find the street on a map, all that was there was a landfill. Officer Anapenko now took notice of Sergei's vintage clothing that looked brand new. He noticed that Sergei was wearing an antique camera around his neck, which also looked new. But what really caught the police officer's attention was Sergei's identification. According to the document, Sergei was born in Kyiv in 1932. That should make him 74 years old, but here he was looking no older than 25.
What surprised me most was his identification papers. The papers were dated 1958, but they were like new. There was a photograph that looked similar to this man, but I didn't see how it could be him. I assumed this person was out of his mind and had to get him to a psychiatrist.
Sergei Ponomarenko didn't want to see a psychiatrist, but his options were that or be arrested for vagrancy, an easy choice. So Sergei was taken to a private psychiatric clinic where everything is captured on video. And that's when things get really strange.
The realities of modern life make it tougher than ever to maintain a healthy diet. AG1 gives you high.
Sergei Ponomarenko didn't want to go to a psychiatric clinic. You can see him on CCTV acting agitated and nervous. The receptionist said when he arrived, he became even more confused.
I remember he kept looking at my mobile phone, just staring at it. He didn't want to give me his code or his camera or any of his belongings. I knew he was going to be a difficult patient.
Compared to the picture at the time of his disappearance, he hasn't aged at all. But even more strange is the background of the photograph. You can see the Motherland statue over Sergei's right shoulder. There's no question that this is Kyiv. Investigators went to the exact spot where Sergei took the picture. They found the location, but the rest of the skyline is wrong. Kyiv doesn't have all those skyscrapers, at least not yet. On the back of the photograph was a message to Valentina, written in Sergei's own hand.
Dearest Valentina, everything is fine with me. I'll try to return when I can. Yours, Sergei.
It would seem that Sergei Ponomarenko had jumped into the future once again. But considering how big Kyiv looks in the photos, and given what the city has endured recently, there's no way to tell just how far into the future Sergei's traveled, but it's obviously pretty far. As of 2011, when this documentary was released, Sergei had not reached out to Valentina, nor was he spotted anywhere in the city. So if we're going to solve this mystery, we're apparently going to have to wait a long, long time. The concept of time travel has been a staple of science fiction for a long time. In 1770, Louis-Sébastien Mercier wrote the book The Year 2440, where the hero travels centuries into the future. A Christmas Carol written by Charles Dickens in 1843 explored time travel in both directions. But the story that really kicked off the genre was The Time Machine, written by H.G. Wells in 1895. But those are works of fiction. Is time travel really possible? And if so, how? Well, we know that traveling into the future is possible. In 1905, Einstein published his special theory of relativity. Einstein described how moving clocks tick more slowly than stationary ones. The faster you move, the slower time moves. So if you want to travel 100 years into the future, what you do is take a spaceship that can travel at 99.995% the speed of light, then fly somewhere 50 light years away, turn around and come back. On Earth, 100 years have passed, but because you were going so fast, the trip only took you a year. Time travel. This theory has been proven in the real world. If you put an extremely accurate clock on a plane and fly it in the same direction that the Earth spins, when you land, that clock will be slightly behind the clocks on Earth. That's special relativity. In 1915, Einstein published the theory of general relativity. This describes gravity as a geometric property of space-time, otherwise known as four-dimensional space, and how space-time is like a fabric or continuum that curves around whatever matter happens to be present.
A word?
What's up?
Obviously, I understand all this.
Obviously.
But maybe dumb it down a little. You know, not everyone out there is as smart as a goldfish.
Well, general relativity is a lot, but for the purposes of this episode, it boils down to this. The higher the gravity, the slower time moves. This is called gravitational time dilation.
Even dumber, please.
Fine. Remember in Interstellar, there's that scene where Matthew McConaughey and the crew...
All right. No, what? That's my McConaughey impression.
Do you have to?
What? I'm helping you dumb it down.
You most certainly are. Anyway, when the crew lands on that planet near the black hole, the gravity is so severe that for every hour they're on the planet, 7 years pass on Earth. A less McConaughey example is
All right.
GPS satellites. They're about 12,000 miles above the Earth's surface, so less gravity, which means time moves faster up there. Time on the satellites has to be adjusted to match the slower moving time down here on the surface. Otherwise, GPS wouldn't work. But all of that is about time travel into the future. What about time travel to the past? Well, that's a bit more theoretical and controversial. Not all physicists believe it's possible. Einstein's theories say it is possible, in theory. How it's achieved is by bending or warping space-time so much that you can take a shortcut from point A to point B, a shortcut that lets you move faster than light. And if you can somehow move faster than light and get space-time to wrap around itself like a cylinder, you can travel back in time, in theory.
Your path through time like this is your world line, your path through time. You're going toward the future always. But what can happen here is that the space-time is sufficiently twisted so that you, while going toward the future all the time, yet circle back and visit an event in your own past.
But doing something like this would require a tremendous amount of energy, possibly all the energy of an exploding star. Now, obviously, our civilization can't do this. But maybe a very advanced civilization could. Maybe that type of civilization flies vehicles like this. So is that what happened to Sergei Ponomarenko when he took a picture of the UFO? Did he somehow enter a wormhole or a tear in the fabric of space-time? Well,
we're looking for ways to maximize our productivity this quarter. Thoughts, Martin?
now we've heard the story of Sergei Ponomarenko, and we've determined that time travel is theoretically possible. So is this story true? No. But every article and video I found that covers this story seems to be just a retelling of each other's version of the story, and none of those versions are right. Today you learned the real story because I was able to track down the original full-length documentary, which I had translated from Russian, which wasn't easy.
Oh, I could have done that for you.
Oh, you speak Russian?
Да.
Everyone knows that word.
У меня много секретов, чувак.
Okay. Anyway, there are a few things in the documentary that point to a hoax. First, in the credits, there's a casting director. But maybe that's for the scenes that were dramatized. Fine. But the police officer says Sergei appeared on Tuesday, April 23rd, 2006. The camera in the lobby says Wednesday, April 23rd. But they're both wrong. That was actually a Sunday. And during his first visit, Sergei tells the doctor that he was born in June 1932. But his ID says he was born in March. During Sergei's second visit to the doctor, the time is 10:39 a.m., April 25th. So the dates and times are all over the place.
You'd think if you were writing a time travel story, you'd try to be correct about the, time.
I know, that was disappointing. Next, the picture of Sergei that the police have on the missing persons report. Look at the picture Sergei sends to Valentina. Look at his clothes. Look at his collar. They're the same clothes, and his collar is flipped the same exact way in both photos. This is the same picture. His expressions are different, but he's been digitally aged, so the producers probably did that to make it seem more real. But these are details they probably should have caught. So yeah, this story is fake. But still, I think it's one of the best time travel stories I've come across. The actors were convincing, and as long as you don't pay too close attention, the pictures are great. So why are we so fascinated with time travel? Well, I think it's because time is one of the few things in our lives that is equal for everyone, and that no one can control. No matter how much wealth or power you may accumulate, eventually time wins. Time travel makes us think of the possibilities of the future, of what may exist after we're gone. Time travel also reminds us of the impossibilities of the past, of decisions made, of mistakes, regrets. How many things in your life would you go back and change? Maybe you wouldn't have said that stupid thing in class. Maybe you would have stood up to that bully in your neighborhood, or been nicer to that nerd on the bus.
Oh, stop reliving your childhood.
Or maybe you would have taken a chance on that business idea, learned a foreign language, traveled the world. But there is a trick we can play on ourselves to take back a little bit of control of time. It's something I try to do whenever I have a difficult decision to make. 10 years from now or 20 years from now, your future self is going to think back to today, right now, and you're going to have regrets. Your future self will say, I'd give anything to go back and make different choices. Well, you're here now. Now is your chance. Be good to your future self by taking chances, by being kinder, by not sweating the small stuff. Because look, time eventually runs out for all of us. And when you get to the end, whether that's next year or 50 years from now, you don't want to look back on your life with regret, saying I should have done this or I wish I did that. Don't do that to your future self. When you finally get to the end, your only thought should be, man, that was a hell of a ride. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. My name is AJ. That's Heckle.
What y'all think about today's video, Vibing Fam? Crazy. Look real, but with today's time, with everything going on with the government, you never know. Like, share, subscribe, comment. Vibing Fam, gone.